Oh, I know that sound. It's time for the Beer News Report. Hi, and welcome to the Beer News Report. Cheers. Today I'm drinking Simpler Times Lager by Minhas Craft Brewing. This is a lager with a touch of hoppiness to it, or you can consider it a very, very mild pale ale. And I'm not usually a fan of hoppy beers, but this one's pretty good. It's got just enough hops to give it the lager a different flavor without making it bitter. I think you should give it a try. Cheers. Well, the winner of the highlight show number 2 is Clinical LSD. In second place was Time Billionaire, and coming in last is Alien Interview. A lot of material I discuss in this show is going to be from the book How to Change Your Mind. It was written by Michael Pollan, and he discusses a history of LSD and its promising future. I highly recommend you read it. But without further ado, let's learn about clinical LSD. Cheers. LSD stands for lysergic acid dithylamide. It's commonly known as acid. It's a powerful hallucinogenic drug which can make you see or hear things that aren't really there or distort things that are. And this feeling is called a trip. Now, LSD is a carbon chain with nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, and it can be made in any chemical lab, and that's why it's still around today. LSD was first made in 1947, but it was called Dilicid, and it was used for a variety of psychiatric applications. Now, throughout the 1950s, mainstream media reported on the research into LSD and its growing use in psychiatry. Time magazine published 6 positive reports on LSD between 1954 and 1959. By the mid-1950s, LSD research was being conducted in major American medical centers, where researchers used LSD as a means of temporarily replicating the effects of mental illness. Leaders in the field of psychology started doing experiments with LSD. Leaders such as Sidney Cohen, Aldous Huxley, and Betty Eisner. Now, Cohen focused on treating people with alcoholism, while Aldous and Betty treated people with minor personality disorders. Word got out, and other psychiatrists like Oscar Janiger tested LSD on more than 100 painters, writers, and composers. He wanted to see if it would improve their creativity. Another study by Dr. Humphrey Osmond gave LSD to alcoholics and Alcoholics Anonymous who had failed when they tried to quit drinking. After 1 year, around 50% of the study had not had a drink, a success rate that has never been duplicated by any other means. Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, participated in medically supervised experiments on the effects of LSD on alcoholism, and he believed that LSD could be used to cure alcoholics. From the late 1940s through to the mid-1970s, extensive research and testing was conducted on LSD. During the 15-year period beginning from 1950, research on LSD generated over 1,000 scientific papers, several dozen books, and 6 international conferences. Overall, LSD was prescribed as treatment to over 40,000 patients. Even film star Cary Grant was one of many men in the 1950s and 60s who were given LSD in concert with psychotherapy. Many psychiatrists began taking the drug recreationally and sharing it with friends. Dr. Timothy Leary's experiments spread LSD usage to a much wider segment of the general populace. This is where the trouble began. Yeah, cheers. Dr. Leary was so enamored with LSD that he would give it out to as many people as he could. By 1965, this caught the attention of the government. Now the war on drugs got started. By 1980, the scientific study of LSD pretty much ended. It wasn't until 2014 that interest in LSD as a treatment for people with anxiety associated with life-threatening diseases got started. But what caused the war on drugs? Because LSD had become so readily available and so many people were taking it unsupervised that they would have bad trips. Okay, so what's a bad trip? When you take LSD, you have this out-of-body experience. It's as if your body melts away and all that's left is the spirit. Now, when LSD is taken in a clinical environment, there's a doctor or practitioner there to guide you through the experience of your body melting away. They explain that this is going to happen, it's something normal, don't be afraid of it. With this guidance, almost everyone had a good trip. But taken recreationally without a guide, a lot of people freaked out when their body melted away. They didn't know that this was a good thing. They didn't realize that this was something normal. So when this happened, these people freaked out, right? And they complained to the government, and that's when the war on drugs got started. By 1970, President Nixon signed the Controlled Substance Act, and LSD was considered a Schedule I drug. Other Schedule I drugs include heroin MDMA, which is commonly known as ecstasy, and of course, marijuana. The range went from Schedule 1, which is the most dangerous, to Schedule 5, which is the least dangerous. And Schedule 5 would be something like cough syrup with codeine in it. Well, thanks a bunch, President Nixon. Cheers. Now, as we all know, just because a drug is illegal doesn't mean people aren't going to use it. Many celebrities and other high-tech leaders used LSD. One of the most well-known high-tech leaders was Apple's Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs felt that LSD made him more creative and opened his mind to new ideas. Quote, definitely taking LSD was one of the most important things in my life, end quote. It is said that LSD is so important to him that if you interviewed with him, he would ask you if you used LSD, and if you said no, the interview was over. And I have no proof of this, but it is rumored that in Silicon Valley, so many engineers were taking LSD to make them more creative that that's how the integrated circuit got developed. And then there was the Beatles. They wrote the song called Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I mean, that's LSD. And then look at the Yellow Submarine. Do you really think that could have happened without LSD? And don't get me started with Jim Morrison of the Doors. Because LSD caused all this creativity, other celebrities want to get in on it. Like comedian George Carlin, actor Jack Nicholson, actress Susan Sarandon, actor Dennis Hopper, actress Angelina Jolie, and even physicist Richard Feynman. And this is just to name a few. One of the funniest uses of LSD was when South Park's creator Trey Parker and Matt Stone went to the Oscars high on LSD dressed as women. Not only is that funny, but that's very creative. Cheers. Now there's a dark side to LSD, and as you would expect, it has to do with our government experimenting with it. Have you heard of the CIA's MKUltra project? This is a project where the CIA used LSD, sometimes illegally, as a truth serum. Their goal was to break the will of the subject and basically brainwash them into doing anything they asked. It started in 1953 and didn't end until 1973. They used US and Canadian citizens, sometimes as unwitting subjects, and this led to its illegitimacy. A number of techniques were used, including electroshock therapy, sensory deprivation, isolation, hypnosis, and verbal and sexual abuse. This was along with the LSD and other chemicals used. The scope of the MKUltra project was so broad, with activities that were carried out under the guise of research at more than 80 institutions, including colleges and universities, hospitals, prisons, and even pharmaceutical companies. Finally, under President Ford, the project was halted. That was one of the good things you did. Cheers. Now we come to the present. LSD is still considered a Schedule 1 drug and is illegal to use, but states are starting to push back. California is trying to pass a law that would legalize LSD and other psychedelic drugs. Oregon has become the first state to legalize psychedelic mushrooms. Denver, Colorado, and Oakland and Santa Cruz, California have decriminalized psychedelic mushrooms. Psychedelic mushrooms are legal in Brazil, Bulgaria, Jamaica, the Netherlands, and even Samoa. And many other countries have decriminalized possession and cultivation of psychedelic mushrooms. Research at universities including Johns Hopkins, Imperial College in London, and the University of California in Los Angeles have shown indications that psychedelic mushroom therapy could help patients experiencing depression, PTSD, and addiction. In 2018, researchers at Johns Hopkins University suggested reclassification of magic mushrooms as a Schedule 4 drug for medical use. Now, we're working on trying to get LSD legal, but you got to start somewhere, and we're starting with psychedelic mushrooms. Now, once their clinical use is proven, then we can move to LSD and even maybe MDMA for clinical use. Now, imagine having a cure for alcoholism or drug addiction. How many soldiers can we help get through post-traumatic stress disorder? The positive effects of LSD can no longer be pushed aside. We need to help these people, and if this is a solution, we got to at least give it a try, right? Yeah, cheers. Well, you can see my beer is almost empty, and that means we're at the end of the show. If you want to contact me, reach me at this email address. I hope you liked the show. If you did, click that like button. Of course, if you want to get notified, you click that subscription button with the bell icon next to it, and that'll let you know when I post a new show. Till then, keep your beer cold and your interest hot. Cheers.